I'm Gentry.
And I'm Dash.
And this is GentryDash at the movies. July 31st, Tenet has been moved back 2 weeks from its original 17th date, but this pretty much cements, in my opinion, that it is going to officially come to theaters, and knowing Christopher Nolan, he definitely does not want this movie going to VOD or some streaming service. He wants you in the theater and watching this with a bag full of popcorn, I'm telling you that. So we figured today we're going to discuss all of Nolan's movies leading up to Tenet. So, Dash, you want to talk about the following?
I do not.
All right, let's go to Memento. Memento was Christopher Nolan coming out in 2000. This was probably his big first feature-length film. Had some pretty good heavy hitter stars in this movie as well. Yeah. And it took me a while to watch this movie because I really didn't know who Christopher Nolan was at this time. I didn't see it till probably after The Dark Knight came out.
Yeah, I saw it after Begins in 2007.
2007 after Begins.
Okay. Yeah.
So you saw it quicker than I did. It came on Netflix, and then I finally started watching it. I was spoiled though because people did tell me that, oh, this whole movie, you got to see it. It takes place backwards, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
You can pick that up from the beginning, but yeah, that I would consider that probably a spoiler because you aren't really, you already got a lot to expect. So yeah,
right.
But you can kind of pick that up pretty early in the movie, I feel.
And this is probably the first instance too where all of a sudden you see Christopher Nolan playing with time too. Mm-hmm. Like we'll see in his other films, he loves to time travel, to mix with time.
Yeah. He's obsessed with that concept. I mean, I think time is interesting for sure. Sometimes I don't think his movies are that hard to grasp. Not a lot of initial critics or general audiences were like, thought Inception was some sort of, insane, just, the craziest mind trip when it really wasn't, But yeah, I think that's a really fun concept that he's brought into pretty much all of his films with either ticking clocks or straight up, like, time traveling.
Yeah, it usually includes some kind of, like, ticking bomb going off.
Yeah, a bomb, or just in the score, there's a clock ticking.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Someone's taking an exam. It's like, ugh.
Now, I can't remember who did the score for for Memento. It wasn't, I don't remember the soundtrack being anything that I really remember.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't really remember. It's not Hans Zimmer.
No.
But whoever they got to, work on his movie, maybe he still keeps them, in its production crew or whatever.
But it was a solid movie. You had Guy Pearce. Really good movie.
Joe Pantoliano.
Pantoliano. You can't beat him, man. Jesus. Yeah. Any movie that he's in, it's going to be grade A, Daredevil.
Yeah. I remember thinking Memento was kind of scary. Like, the whole concept was weird. I mean, the tattoos all over his body. Mm-hmm. And Guy Pearce...
Losing your memory.
Guy Pearce gave a really good performance. And, not knowing, really, you can't really trust anybody. And, the movie just had this dark opening with the flashing Polaroid.
Mm-hmm. That was a great opening credit.
Dead body, the character. And it was... I remember just finding it kind of creepy,
Yeah.
But I really liked it a lot.
This is still Christopher Nolan's best movie. Beyond comic book. So I would still say Dark Knight, but I would say this is probably his best movie that doesn't involve a comic book character. And he followed that up 2 years later with Insomnia. Now, we both kind of about in the same boat on this one.
Yeah, I didn't see this till probably television, maybe like like on TNT or something,
Oh, remember that old thing?
I mean, I liked it. I thought the concept was cool. I think Pacino, he accidentally kills his partner, and he's also trying to find Robin Williams, who was the killer, the antagonist.
So he's trying to cover that.
He's trying to cover that, so I thought that was kind of cool, and the Alaska setting was interesting. I just, it didn't do too much for me. I mean, I think it's a really, really good movie, but I don't really... When I think of Chris Nolan, it's probably one of the last movies to pop into my head,
Which, I know there's a huge fan following out there for that movie, and I'm, generally in the same boat with that. It is a cool concept, a detective that can barely sleep. He's got insomnia issues, and then he goes to Alaska at a certain time of year where there's barely any nightfall. So there's only about an hour of real darkness, and I thought that was really cool. It was a good setup. just because they had Robin Williams, I feel like they could have just like left the murder a mystery a little bit longer. Not revealed that he's the one that killed. So
it's been a long time since I've seen it.
It was great acting though, all around. And then of course Insomnia, he proved to WB that he could handle some big name actors, Al Pacino, Robin Williams. So then they put him on the duties of revamping Batman, one of the biggest properties that they have for WB. And I say with Batman Begins, he nailed it. I mean, there was a lot of praise back then. I remember even Roger and Ebert, best Batman movie ever made,
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they loved the hell out of that movie. Of course, as kids growing up on the 89 Batman, of course, that would still be our best Batman movie ever made, but it definitely was right up there with it, though. It was good.
I didn't feel that at the time. I saw it in theaters with a buddy of mine, and I liked it. I remember really liking it. I thought I liked the origin story and stuff. I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of explain it, and then I was like, oh, this is really grounded in reality, obviously. You didn't have like Poison Ivy and stuff like that.
Crazy Batmobiles.
Yeah, and, everyone has to have
gadgets.
Everyone has a vehicle.
I love that though, that he explained every little thing that he had. In that I remember, made it so grounded.
Yeah, I remember not liking the villain too much. I thought that was an odd.
I never even knew. I didn't know what Ra's al Ghul was.
The Scarecrow as well. I remember not really.
I knew
thinking that concept was odd, and then I learned to. I mean, I eventually kind of grew a little more love for it, but I think it's probably my least favorite out of the trilogy, but still really good. I mean, it's obviously Joel Schumacher kind of drove it into the ground.
Yeah.
So,
it was hard to get hyped up. There was in 2005. I went and saw it as well with my ex-girlfriend at the time in theaters, and I felt like the same way. I was kind of perplexed because I didn't know if this was actually supposed to be a prequel to the 89 Batman, because they leave it off with the Joker cliffhanger there at the end. So I'm like, is this supposed to tie in to Tim Burton's Batman, or is this a complete revamp? And I think they were kind of too mysterious about it and didn't really let you know that it was a completely new
They bring
universe.
Jack back, yeah.
Yeah. It was like, is this supposed to go on?
I knew it would be its own thing. I didn't really think it would tie into that, because I think, they want to start a new franchise, obviously.
I felt like they were being coy just because they weren't sure how it was going to take off. Like, if it made money, then we're going to start a new franchise.
Yeah.
If it didn't make money, you could look at it as like a tie-in to Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, Batman, they just move on to a different director, I guess, eventually. You didn't have too many, reboots immediately back then. This was when it took a decade to get, something restarted. Now you can do it within 6 months. Yeah.
Just reboot anything that first failed idea. Yeah. Reboot it.
It did really well from what I remember. I mean, I didn't really follow box office numbers.
Was that the first reboot?
No.
What comic book movie came before that? That rebooted everything.
Well, I mean, wasn't there I'm trying to think. Was that the first one? I mean, there was a bad...
That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, wait a minute. That might have been the first reboot.
Wasn't there a Hulk movie or something? And then, there was a Hulk TV show, then Ang Lee's Hulk. Yeah, Spider-Man?
No, that was in the middle. See, this is why, again, Batman Begins was not huge to me, because I was so caught up in the X2 wave and the Spider-Man 2 wave, because those two movies were phenomenal. I love those movies.
Did they have an 80s Punisher, and then they did the Thomas Jane one in 03?
Well, yeah, but mainstream,
Mainstream. I guess, yeah.
This is the first reboot. Year after that, a year later, WB let Christopher Nolan do his little pet projects, and so he came out with The Prestige, which is a magician movie, and not the only magician movie that year to come out. Yeah. And that's probably why both of us said that it took us so long to see The Prestige, even though I love the movie. It's a great movie. I actually did a video here on the channel, so if you want to check that out in the playlist, you can find it there. But what is your opinion on it?
Well, I didn't. This is another one I missed. I saw The Illusionist, I remember. And I remember kind of knowing The Prestige. I think The Prestige came out maybe 3 weeks later.
I think it was literally 2 months later.
Yeah. It was because I saw Illusionist in October, and then Prestige was probably November. So.
I think it was August, Illusionist came out.
Yeah,
and then October, Prestige came out.
They
were too much.
I didn't. Yeah,
than one another.
I definitely chose the Mr. Pibb over the Dr. Pepper.
Me too.
So I would see Prestige. I think like maybe I rented it like 2 years later, about when I saw Memento, and I remember thinking it was really cool. I mean, I know you've done a video on it. You like it a little more than I do. I think it's one of those movies. Once you know the reveal, it's definitely not as enjoyable. Still really fun to watch. A lot of the images in that movie still stick with me, like the hats on the ground, and Christian and Hugh Jackman are really good together.
And Tesla.
Yeah.
Or Bowie.
Yeah, David Bowie. After that was The Dark Knight.
And there we go. Yeah. Dark Knight. This probably is what put Christopher Nolan on the map. Everybody knew who Christopher Nolan was after this movie.
Yeah, I don't really think this one or Inception, because I don't think people still knew who maybe directed The Dark Knight, maybe like, maybe really general audience. It was more like the Heath Ledger movie, so, but yeah, it was awesome, man. I mean, that definitely, it was everything I, wanted and more, for sure. It was not a letdown by any means, it was
still the best comic book movie ever made.
Yeah, still a lot of parts to it, you rewatch and some parts are just kind of that just could not happen kind of thing, but a lot of letting that go makes it a lot more enjoyable. And yeah, it is a lot like Heat.
It moves at such a good pace, and it is just and then of course performances throughout Heath and everybody.
Yeah. I mean, Christian definitely plays second fiddle. It's just kind of hard, but Gary Oldman and even Aaron Eckhart, who I don't think is like the world's greatest actor, he does a really good job for sure. Yeah,
Two-Face.
But yeah, that's up there for sure. That's probably my
my best comic book movie, I think.
Okay, well, Chris Nolan wise, I'd say it's my second best. Yeah, we'll get to my first.
Yeah, we'll get to the first. All right, so after that, you mentioned it.
It's following. It's following is my favorite.
Yeah, we could tell from the intro.
Yeah.
So the next movie, of course, he was able to go out and do another pet project. It's Inception, and you said maybe if you didn't know who Christopher Nolan was, this definitely was the movie that.
Yeah, this was the one. I mean, everybody. I remember seeing it. Everybody. Back then, I remember saw it, and I liked it, man. I thought it was really kick-ass. I mean, that score was definitely pretty... Oh, yeah. Probably one of the only things that I look back on that really kept me into it, because the concept was a little just odd to me, the whole dream thing, because it's just... basically they came off as a bunch of drug addicts, with the IVs and stuff. Yeah. But I enjoyed it, and Leo got to work with Chris Nolan. Clearly Hollywood wanted to work with the alpha of the remaining movie stars. But yeah, everyone. Tom Hardy, first time I knew who this guy was.
That's right. Yes,
the Forger.
So
I really, for as little screen time as he had, I remember being like, oh, who's this guy?
You must dream bigger.
Darling.
Yeah.
But it was good. I mean, there's not too much to say. This movie, there's no real reason to dissect it. I'm sure some YouTubers had. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, the ambiguous ending, people wanted an answer to that. But Chris...
I think especially when I left the theater originally, I remember going opening weekend, of course, with a bunch of friends. And we all went to the bar or something after this movie, and everybody was like, talking, "Oh, I think he's still dreaming" and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know. I think it's pretty straightforward, and especially rewatching it, he's at home with his kids. Like,
I think not to just agree with you for sake of this. I do remember thinking that was the case. He got home.
Yeah,
I didn't really have this. It was I guess, dark movie because there was a lot of stuff with his ex-wife, Mo. Chris always picks the most interesting name for female characters.
But it looks that table wobble where.
Well, I think the director. I think Chris said it was ambiguous stuff. But overall, it's solid. It's probably middle of the list, maybe a little higher for me. It's awesome.
It's not one that I revisit all the time, but it's still good. And then, of course, after that, we have the conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy, the Batman trilogy. We have Dark Knight Rises. And this one was kind of a letdown, I would think. I think both of us, we went IMAX opening day together, actually, to see this. And, boy, I think you fell a little bit harder than I did.
Yeah, I was bummed for sure. I just, I didn't know. Like, I had to just so much to process.
This might have been one of the first movies that him and I actually went to go see together. Actually, me and you first started seeing movies together, and took it pretty hard.
Bummed for sure. I mean, I think definitely one you had to process. There was just so much going on in there, and then you did have reference to the first, which I thought was really cool. Like,
it did tie it back
Ra's al
around.
Ghul's daughter Talia, who Marion Cotillard gives her greatest performance ever. No, she does not. But I was bummed. I mean, Tom Hardy was really cool as Bane. I thought that was cool that they used this sort of, who I thought was kind of a doofus, because I'm not really big into the comics, but he's actually sort of very, menacing and intelligent villain, also really strong. But
oh, you wanted the Batman and Robin Bane?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Pump me full of venom drug.
No, I ended up getting this movie on Blu-ray that December, and I kind of grew to like it a lot more. Kind of a little behind the scenes on it, and how much getting out of the, I don't know, a lot of the metaphors I guess made it. I mean, the ending is still a little.
It's one of those things where you
to me.
set the expectations so high.
I knew it wouldn't. I mean, I knew it could definitely not be that good, but I've grown to like it now. It's kind of in the middle for me. It's Dark Knight Rises and then Begins bottom for me.
Okay.
Trilogy,
Yeah, I do think at the end of that movie where it really suffered is just the time displacement there. They kind of it felt like they rushed the ending a lot. They were like, oh shit, this movie's almost 3 hours long.
It's already gone. Yeah.
And it goes from like summer-ish feeling, and then all of a sudden it's winter and there's snow on the ground. So like the time...
Bruce was in the prison for like 6 months, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's what you get out of it.
Or however long.
And then it just shows back up at the city like that,
Yeah, you almost want to say they could have done like 2 parts, like they did with like some of the Harry Potters, or the last Harry Potter, and I think with The Hobbit.
Yeah, so this movie drew a lot of inspiration from Tales of Two City, and I think he kind of went a little bit too far with that, because you never really saw at the beginning why the Harvey Dent act was so bad, and because I mean Gotham was peaceful at the beginning, like everybody was prospering, everything was peaceful. If you had like something at the beginning that like showed really the disparity in the rich and poor, and that the poor were really suffering because of the rich or something, you needed something, I don't know, extra there to pull off this scenario that Christopher Nolan was going for. But I give him high marks for trying something new in a comic book. Very.
There were some
different.
really good shots in that movie too, like the snow on Wall Street and stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, the ice the ice underneath the bridge where they were making them walk across the ice and everything.
Yeah.
The bat signal lighting up the bridge. I don't know why you would let everybody know that you're there, but whatever. Still looked cool. It was a signal sent out to everybody. There's hope, I guess. Is what they were
and
going
Hathaway in that suit.
Dark Knight Rises. I think it is the least best one of the trilogy. It is probably would go Dark Knight Begins and then that one last. But for you, that one's the second best.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah,
that's the middle one. You want to introduce that next movie?
Yeah, Interstellar. 2014. This is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie.
It might be your favorite.
Yeah. So I saw this in New York at the IMAX at Lincoln Center twice, 70 millimeter, and I just loved every minute of it. I love space, and I love some of the concepts. I know got taken as kind of goofy and sappy, but I really liked it. There were, there was humor too from, the robot. Tars, right? There's a second one.
Tars and
the strange Matt Damon cameo, which still kind of baffles me, but it's still hilarious.
They kept that pretty silent. I did not know Matt Damon was supposed to be in this. I remember when he comes up and he's all wet and stuff, and I was like, that looks like somebody I know. I'm like, is that Matt Damon?
But The Martian came out like 2 years later, right? Or a year later, right? And that was I was hoping it was the same guy.
Basically, so you're like sitting there and it's like, damn, Matt Damon, stop getting lost in space, man.
Yeah,
that's what his next movie should be, Lost in Space. The old classic TV show.
He definitely, that became a joke. But yeah, your thoughts on Interstellar?
Oh, I loved it too. I went to a shitty built-on AMC IMAX that's nowhere near as good as we have one or only two true IMAXs in our state, And I was definitely not going to drive 2.5 hours away to go to the real true IMAX. But we do have one in our state capital. And I wanted to go there. And after seeing it in the IMAX in the AMC theater, I was like, oh, I got to go. But I never, unfortunately, had found the time or anything to get back to go see it again in IMAX. So I wish I had. The only thing that was cool about that AMC IMAX, and I think this is true, but it felt like either the sound system's just that good, or they actually have like vibrators in the seats. So like when the shuttle's taking off, or like the whole docking scene or anything like that, the chairs would rumble, and it was just mighty impressive. Really sucked you in, very immersive. So that was pretty cool. I just wish the screen was bigger, I guess. But
yeah, I don't think they had, but I don't know. Maybe your theater did. I don't know.
It definitely felt like it. It was either that or the Hans Zimmer score just rumbling thing.
It's awesome for sure, man.
And so after Interstellar, which Interstellar for me, it'd be up there. I think it's definitely top 3. Yeah, I would say Memento, Dark Knight, and then probably Interstellar. It's probably my 3 favorite of the Nolan movies.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Dunkirk would be Christopher Nolan's last movie to come out. And this movie, at first, I think I went into it with the wrong mindset. I was really thinking Saving Private Ryan kind of thing. Like, oh, this one is going to be his Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. And then I remember hearing the runtime was only like an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, that's really short for Christopher Nolan. Where
definitely didn't feel like that though. That was a long hour 50 from what I remember.
Yeah, so
it's a tense movie.
Yeah, well, it is a tense movie, but you didn't feel like it dragged though, did it?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, there's definitely some shots where I wanted a little more to go on, but no, I mean it was that whole score the whole time was so intense that it was.
And we're going to get into that before we close out, but about scores and everything. But with this movie, this is just classic Chris Nolan. This is why I love his movies, is he's a practical person. He got so many old replica World War II fighter planes. He got ships, brought in. He got all as much practical stuff as he could do to shoot this movie. And you're talking about a guy that loves filming on IMAX, and the way this movie I did get to go see in our proper IMAX here in our state capital, and this was amazing. I actually went and saw it twice. At first I didn't really like the story, the time jump. Once again, we're doing this time jump thing, and it was kind of confusing because you just saw on screen 1 hour, 1 week, 1 day, and you were like, what's going on? But then when everything starts meeting up at the end over this one ship and this this battleship that is sinking.
Poor Georgie.
So poor George, man, that little boy.
Yeah, God. But I haven't seen it since theaters, but I remember really.
Oh, really? Wow, it's been that long.
I got the T-shirt though. I saw Dunkirk. It says
right.
I saw Dunkirk in 70mm IMAX,
got that cool
and I wore it and I would never be the guy to wear, but I wore it out that night. Like I was so proud of myself, I guess. But
I voted.
I really enjoyed it, and I love war movies. Some can definitely be more exciting and tragic as others, but this one was had its own feel to it, and I think he did something really special. I don't really hear too many people talk about it, and I remember after
a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah, I remember after like no one either saw it or they were like they wanted to be like Batman or something, But
they wanted to be like Hacksaw Ridge
Inception
or
like
they
wanted basically
blood and guts.
They wanted Saving Private Ryan or a Black Hawk Down or something.
That was a big thing. Christopher Nolan definitely in that film was like, we're not showing any blood.
Yeah,
we're not going to glorify
it was
any of the deaths.
Still violent though, still tragic.
So that's our rundown of all the Christopher Nolan movies. Now let's get into something that Christopher Nolan, and he speaks a lot of. I've seen a few of his interviews where he mentions, and he really knows the importance of sound in his movies. A lot of his movies, you wouldn't have the same effect if you took the music away and just had the dialogue and just the sound effects. The music is very important in his collaboration with Hans Zimmer. We've mentioned him several times throughout the different movies that we're going through. Of course, Dunkirk being the last one. Amazing score. We love a whole bunch of different soundtracks off that. And the way he mixes in like the soundtrack with the actual sound effects and everything that's going on in that movie. But even with Dark Knight, great score. How do you beat Danny Elfman's like original Batman theme? Hans Zimmer found a way. I mean,
yeah.
What else? Inception. We were talking about Inception. Mm-hmm. That dum, dum, just that drums for the trailer just set the tone for Hollywood for years.
It was almost overkill because I remember.
Oh yeah.
Like the movie starts with that, and I remember being like, "This is just extremely ominous." And the movie didn't really have that feel to it. It was more like tense. But I remember being kind of...
I think spoof movies started using it, too.
I had never been so scared to see the WB logo. Like, oh, no. The other thing about Christopher Nolan is, like, the sound, and he's also big on not watching movies on your phone or a tablet. He wants you to go to the theater, so that's why I think he's so adamant about getting Tenet out. I think he understands that, yes, it is a pandemic, so I don't obviously want to rush it out there. If it's safe enough, let's get people back in the theater.
All right, that was our rundown of Christopher Nolan movies, what we liked, what we disliked, a little bit of the good and bad of Christopher Nolan's filmography. Are you going to go see Tenet when it comes out in theaters? July 31st, set right now. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed anymore. And are you daring to go back and sit with a bunch of strangers during this COVID-19 epidemic? I think I will be.
Yeah. And stay tuned for our next retrospective as we go through our favorite Kevin Spacey flicks.
That's going to be a toucher. Good night and good luck.